If you're slow and you don't perceive the risks and you're not able to manage it and you're stuck in your way of thinking and you can't manage the new learning curve, you don't understand when the situational context is changing or how to make it into an opportunity, you will be the mark. Hey, it's Chris Manlander. I want to do something kind of fun with this podcast, which is look for a couple of aha moments in some stories of critical decision making. It's a place where I've spent the last 30 years working with the biggest brands, startups, national leaders, where they get into situations which are they're asked to make their biggest decision and get it right when it counts the most. And there's a couple things that happen in these times, which is that the noise, the pressure, the confusion lowers the probability of success for many of them. It changes the dynamics. They're not as good as they were before. There's others, however, who have learned that when you find this friction, confusion, noise, uncertainty in the marketplace, you lean in, you create opportunity. And so listen to the stories a bit. What I want to do is be able to create the context for looking at the decisions that you're making about your own business, about your own organization, about the strategic initiatives that you might be leading, and be able to look at them through a new lens and understand that applies to me, or this is what I can do better at. Because each one of these stories, as different as they might be from your ordinary circumstances, helps us to understand what it is that separates those who win and lose in those moments. So let's get started. Goldman Sachs is one of the most influential financial institutions in the world. On Wall Street, the argument always is, don't bet against Goldman Sachs. They are big, they are sophisticated, they are extraordinary sharks in the water. In 2005, there were a number of warning signs about this market that were out there, and people were starting to get nervous. On Wall Street, there was a common sentiment, which is that everyone was trying to get their last set of deals done so they could make their money and then get out and let the losses go onto somebody else's shoulders. It was commonly known. In 2006, there were additional signals where people were getting very nervous. Goldman Sachs was starting to unload very quietly their positions in the subprime housing market. They had a larger strategy going on. And again, they will deny all of this, but if you look at the arc of the behavior, they started offloading their positions. Then in July 2007, they did something that had never been done before. They issued a collateral call on AIG Financial Products, which is a counterparty on some derivative instruments. This had never been done before. AIG had the imputed backing of one of the largest financial institutions in the country. It was a shot across the bow. Something happened in that moment, which is that AIG, the executives at AIG, many of whom had seen the same warning signs coming out. One of their executives, Gene Park, who had been asked to take over the desk that wrote these instruments, was waving his arms saying, this is not good, get out, get out. They didn't. AIG FP then became on the adverse side of that collateral call, that capital call, and they were a bit paralyzed, confused, fighting against it, thought maybe they were the subject of an attack, not being able to see the bigger forest, but for the trees that they were stuck behind, adamant that they were right in their analysis. They had been successful all along. They would be successful in this case, but it was a new learning curve. It was a new situational context, all of which they were unprepared for. And this is a new risk that popped them from out of nowhere. What happened then was that AIG FP struggled for an additional 14 months until the final days in September of 2008, when the Federal Reserve was forced to orchestrate a taxpayer-financed bailout. All of the parties, all the major financial institutions that you would know by brand name, had participated in the subprime housing crisis. They had risk exposures. They were making their money too. Many of the strongest ones were able to withstand that storm. They were asked by the Federal Reserve to help cover or back AIG FP and other struggling financial institutions. They declined to do so. So the Fed was forced to act and orchestrate a taxpayer bailout. What happened then is that those institutions, including Goldman Sachs, were made whole. 100 cents on the dollar came back to them. In fact, a number of them emerged from the crisis stronger than they were before, while several, including AIG, failed. What do we learn from that? Which is that there is a much longer decision arc that we always have to be plotting, A. B, I think you can make the case that Goldman Sachs planted a mark. They reduced their own exposure and then they issued a collateral call, and it was the first domino in a series that fell. It was the domino that tinkled a series of additional collateral calls from across the industry that targeted institutions that were already under pressure. It sent a shiver of fear through the market, and so the rules all change when fear enters the market. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if you're slow and you don't perceive the risks and you're not able to manage it and you're stuck in your way of thinking and you can't manage the new learning curve, you don't understand when the situational context is changing or how to make it into an opportunity, you will be the mark, as AIG FP was. 2 lessons right there. Do this for yourself, for your own venture, for your own strategy, for your own businesses, for your own organization. Do 3 things. The first one is write down, which is identify who you can put a mark on in your competitive set and why. Secondly, what's the trigger point? When can that mark be exercised? It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't have to be in 6 months. It doesn't have to be in 12 months. But there needs to be an inflection point that you can use to reset the market and how you compete. And thirdly, identify who will mark you and why. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.